So if you want to go into a career in the arts, one of the most important things is to get your work out into the world. And there are all kinds of ways of doing that. When you start, it can be quite difficult, seemingly. But of course, there's Instagram, which is a great place to start. And if you're making things, performance, music, objects, art, whatever, organize an exhibition. And one of the ways of doing that is to make a small exhibition in a space that you can find in your neighborhood. It could be at home. Invite a few friends around, maybe your parents, maybe have a small party for your friends, and make the work for sale, and try and find people to collaborate to make that exhibition with. So to do the promotion and to maybe have something to eat or drink when you arrive, to make sure that the space is lit nicely. And it can happen just for an evening or for an afternoon, but it means that people get to see your work. More importantly, it means that you start getting the experience of what it means to feel like showing your work to the world. If it's music, obviously you can try and organize a performance. And from there, obviously, then your work starts going into people's homes, and people start to talk about your work, people start seeing your work, and then if you go to a gallery, which will typically happen a bit later, usually a year or two or longer after you're out of school, they'll then see that you're actually keen enough to start doing the work to get your work out into the world yourself. And they're much more likely to pick you up because of that. So the amazing thing about being a creative person is that the creative process has so many components. One of them, for example, is to research. So very often before I make something, or when I'm in the process of making something, I want to know more about what it is that I'm making. So let's say I start getting excited about portraits. I'm making a portrait maybe of myself. Maybe I'm doing a self-portrait. Then I can go and look at portraits online. I can start reading about portraiture. I can go to local museums. I can start getting a sense of how other people have tackled that problem. And the more that I start going down that rabbit hole of the research, which, as I say, is only one component of the creative process, the more I can start going into other kinds of disciplines. Lighting, for example. A performance. When you're posing for a portrait, how do you get the sitter to sit so that they're comfortable? That's a performance skill. That's not a fine art skill necessarily. But the creative process is shared by all of those different fields, ranging from sculpture to fine art to photography to graphic design to interior design to architecture to engineering. They all have the creative processes that you need to use in order to make those things are kind of the same. So what I love about being a creative person is that it gives me constant opportunities to learn and get excited about finding out new things. So that's one side of things. But of course, the other side is that you're making things all the time. And those things can range from little experiments and small versions of things before they become more ambitious when you make your sort of more final versions of things. So you're starting to understand materials, you're starting to get a sense of how this thing that you're making might take its final form. And there's something extremely engaging and joyful about that process. And anybody who's made anything, and I'm talking here about making a garden or making a cake, making a meal, will understand that. They'll know that the activity of bringing something new into being is enormously gratifying. And to have that in one's day, every day of one's life is an enormous privilege. And that privilege is open to anybody. There's nobody who does any kind of work that can't make 15 or 20 minutes in their day to make something.